Hi everyone, I'm Mike Broda. I'm the managing director of TerraQuip Drilling Equipment. We've had the company for 8 years now, and last year we also started the TerraQuip Talk podcast. Now, this is the podcast where we're trying to give a voice to our industry. So if you want to participate, if you have something to talk about, please hit me up. Come right here in the studio. Let's have a chat about it, a discussion between professionals. Or if you have a topic that you want me to tackle, I love talking about this stuff, right? So please give us a like, send us a message, send us some good words, hopefully, and we can't wait to hear from you. Cheers. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of TerraQuip Talk, the podcast where we're talking everything about drilling. In today's episode, I would like to discuss the installation requirements for the MRA line of Marini drilling attachments. They're incredibly designed tools to drill anchors, micropiles, self-drill anchors, hollow bars, you name it. And they can be installed on excavators, spider excavators, telehandlers, you name it. The beauty of the Marini Mast Attachment is that it connects directly to your excavator's normal hydraulic system. But here's the catch. You can't just plug and play. You have to respect all the requirements indicated by the manufacturer, in this case by Marini. Otherwise, you won't be able to get the performance that they were designed for. The other day, I was talking to a client, which prompted me to make this episode. He said, for a mast attachment that we delivered about 2 years ago, he said, man, that hammer is, the drifter, the percussion from the drifter is really weak. I'm getting more performance from a handheld drill, air drill. And I was like, man, that's not possible. Of course, I don't usually argue with the client. You know, if that's the reality he's experiencing, that's fine. Who am I to tell him otherwise? But I was curious, you know, I told him, I was like, look, where is the mast attachment? Is it connected right now to the excavator? Do we have access to it? So I took my guys straight away. We went there, did a full investigation. Hey, what's happening? And sure enough, lo and behold, the electrical connection was not right. Temperature was not right. It was overheating. The oil delivery was not right as well. Once all of these things have been sorted, the client called me and was like, man, it's a different world now. It's working like crazy. I love it. But that's the thing. We didn't know about it. He didn't tell us. We would have loved to help him. If you're listening now, make sure you call us next time. All right. But anyway, before we get into the nitty-gritty about the hydraulic requirements, I just want to underline Marini attachments are designed to be operated and mounted on standard excavators, spider excavators, as I said, and all that, but just as long as the setup is properly done, right, according to Marini's requirements. And there are not many things that we need, right? They're not very impossible criteria to satisfy. There's oil delivery, oil pressure, return line, case drain, not on all attachments, just on some, and the electrical connection, right? But they are very, very strict in terms of what they need, in terms of oil delivery, in terms of voltage, in terms of power, okay? Just to give you an example, in Australia, we have sold, over the last 5 or 6 years, we sold about 20 mast attachments of different sizes, anywhere from MRA 80 all the way up to MRA 300. And what Marini offers very, very unique to the market with this mast attachments, besides the quality and the support, because they do offer great quality and support, they offer a rod carousel, which I don't know of any other manufacturers that offer that on a mast attachment. They offer a quick conversion kit between top hammer and rotary, air flushing swivel, all that sort of stuff, right? There's many advantages. We actually done a full episode on Marini Mast Attachments, so I won't go into too many details about it right now. Today, what I want to focus is on the common issues that I've noticed with these mast attachments on the excavators. Because you see, there's two worlds when it comes to mast attachments. There's the mast attachment that we provide, and then there's the excavator which the client supplies, or he buys brand new or secondhand or whatever. So this needs to be married, okay? There's 4 connections, as I said: oil delivery, oil return, case drain, and power supply. Now, let's talk about all of these factors. There's oil flow and pressure, because they influence each other. If an excavator tells you, oh, we have, let's say 180 liters per minute oil flow, that's fantastic, but that's at 0. They have to tell you at what pressure, because if it's at 0 bar, as soon as you increase the pressure, let's say 150, 200 bar pressure, the oil delivery drops to maybe half of it, right? So it's very important to make sure that you match all of this. In terms of oil flow, it's recommended to have at least 10% margin on the oil flow, and this margin accounts for the performance losses with the hydraulic circuit and its load. The excavator's flow rate, as I said, is normally presented at 0 bar, but the hydraulic pump's performance curve means oil flow decreases as pressure increases. Then what about the return line? Well, the return line, first of all, must be cooled using the base machine's heat exchanger, and if that's not enough, I'm sorry, but you need to install a separate cooling system. And then you've also got the situation of back pressure, which is absolutely critical. It needs to be measured at the end of the stick with cold oil, and it should not be higher than 10 to 12 bar, let's say. In terms of temperature, we actually put an oil flow meter with the temperature, with the pressure gauge, and we have to check that it doesn't heat up more than, let's say, 60, 70 degrees. If it does, then it's required to have a separate cooling system. And with the back pressure, if it's too high, not only will reduce the equipment performance, that's the least of your worries, it will also cause significant damage to the Mast hydraulic control valve distributors and blow the caps. We have replaced many caps. This is actually one of the issues that we received out of 20 excavators. I think at least 5 of them, they call us, hey, we blow the caps. Someone reversed. And this takes us to the next caution about Mast attachments. If you reverse the pressure with the return, you blow the caps, right? You create massive damage. You start pissing the oil like crazy. So number one, never invert the delivery and the return lines of the excavator. How can you do this, right? A good way is obviously have marks, like the zip ties, color the zip ties, pressure with pressure, or make them different sizes. That's the best possible way, because then you can't fit them together, right? They just don't fit. So that's very important as well. Now, in terms of the case drain, well, case drain is only required on some Mast attachments from Marini. So MRA 80 and 100, for example, is not necessary. But if it is present, which it is on all the other Mast attachments from the MRA 120 and above, the purpose is to drain oil from the motors and the distributors, right? The sole purpose of the case drain. And how do you connect that? You just connect it from the Mast attachment directly into the tank. It's very simple. Hey guys, just a second. I just want to say this. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this episode, to listen to us every single week. It gives us immense pleasure to talk about our industry. We want to give a voice to our industry here. So if you enjoy this, if you find this interesting, please hit that like button, share with someone, subscribe. All of this helps us a lot. It means the world to me. Thank you so much. Now let's get on with the episode. Now let's talk a little bit about the power supply. The Mast attachment requires either 12 if it's a very small Mast attachment, or 24 volts. Majority of the time 24 volts power supply, which powers the radio control and basic safety devices of the machine. But mainly its purpose is to basically open the valves and let the oil flow to create your functions, right? To have your functions operate on the mast. Your feet, your rotary, your hammer, and all of the above. So what happens, we actually had, again, out of 20 Mast attachments, we had maybe 3 or 4 where the electrical connection was not done right. And here's the bloody thing with this electrical connection, right? That makes things so confusing. Sometimes, even if let's say the excavator mechanic made a mistake, connected the Sparky, connected 12 volts instead of 24, it's not like it's not working at all. Sometimes it does work, and it opens, you have like a somewhat functioning mast, but sometimes it doesn't work at all. So we tell people straight up, hey, check the fuses are right, just take a multimeter and check the power. You take the power, you put the ground, and you've got 24 volts. But something that actually happened to us, something very interesting, the excavator did have 2 batteries. They were connected in series, right? So for those of you that actually know a bit of electrical, have a bit of knowledge of electrical, this is very interesting because the batteries were connected. Now, the client took power from one battery and then ground, right? Connected a Mast attachment. Now, when we checked the Mast attachment, we were checking the same thing, power and then ground. But because the batteries were in series, it was actually giving us 26, 27 volts. Only some components of the Mast attachment, they were giving us 12 or 14 volts. And we're like scratching our heads. What the hell is happening? What? And I said, no, we need to shake the battery. Now, the excavator batteries were also covered with a piece of rubber, so we couldn't really see very well how they were connected. We just assumed they were connected right. As soon as we got in there, we noted there was only one battery connected to the mast attachment. They were connected between each other, but not to the mast. And I'm like, oh my God, this is such a... But anyway, a learning lesson. It was good. We fixed it, and then it was fine. This is my favorite one, check valves. Check valves need to be present on all cylinders of the base carrier. These valves completely block the leakage of oil in the positioning cylinders, which keep the arm completely stationary during drilling. Without them, you risk damaging the mast positioning system, right? Because I don't care how new your excavator is, you can't just trust its hydraulic system. You gotta install check valves there, right? Holding valves. Because if you don't and you modify the drilling axis, the excavator will move, right? It's not if, it will definitely move. It doesn't matter how new it is. You modify the drilling axis, and then you put pressure on the rod, on the shaft of the rotary or the drifter. The chain as well, you can damage the chain because it's pulling at different angles. So extremely important to have check valves. Normally, if there's no check valves, we should technically tell the client, look, you didn't install check valve or don't start it. If you drill like this, unfortunately, I will be forced to cancel your warranty, which of course we don't want. We want to be supportive to our clients, but these are important requirements that they need to respect. Now, speaking of the positioning, it's super important in the machine to have a brake system on the turret's rotation, because during the horizontal or let's say sub-horizontal drilling, the crowd force of the mast could cause the turret to rotate. This would again result in misalignment of the drilling axis and put pressure and uneven forces in places where there shouldn't be any forces and damage the mast. Now, how do we do the test once we install the mast attachment? Well, Marini gives us this table with all different pressures, hydraulic pressures, from 0 to 50, 50 to 100, 100, you get my point, up to 250. And then for each of these pressure ranges, let's say, you need to check the oil delivery of the excavator while executing different functions. And how do you do this? You test for at least 20 minutes. Let's say you block something, you just pull automatic feed up the mast until the rotary reaches the end, and then he's going to try to continue going. Now, this is how you measure the maximum pressure. At the same time, maybe you rotate and you let it run for minutes, at least, let's say 10, 15 minutes. First of all, the hydraulic pressure has gone up to, let's say, 220. What the oil delivery is going to be, and if it stays consistent, whatever the number might be. And then also to check the temperature. It's super important not to cook the system. The temperature cannot go above, let's say, 60, 70 degrees, right? Even 80 degrees, but no, 70 is like kind of like the maximum that you want. If it does, you need to install a separate cooling system on the excavator. Now, let's talk a little bit about the stability of the excavator and the mast attachment. How do you determine what mast attachment weight can be used for what excavator? Let's say you have a mast. Usually a general rule of thumb is if the mast is 2 tons, let's say, the excavator needs to be about 90% bigger than that. So it can be like 20 to 25 tons. So usually the mast attachment to be about 15, 20% of the weight of the excavator. But of course, that's just a general rule of thumb. The way to check properly the stability is you have to check the weakest point of the excavator for lifting. So you turn 90% against across the tracks, boom fully extended, and then lifted the boom approximately 1.5 meters from the ground. That's the weakest point. If the lifting capacity is above, let's say, 2 tons in our case, because we took a 2-ton mast weight, then that means you're good. Of course, you have to include the rods and the tools with it as well. Now, to connect the mast to the excavator, you need an actual hitch, right? The connection thing. So to determine the correct angle of inclination of this coupling bracket, usually Marini will ask you if they're building the hitch for you, they'll ask you for 2 photos of the excavator one with the bucket fully closed and one with the bucket fully open. So you need to take a photo from the side of the excavators. So what are some of the most frequent issues, let's say, that we get calls from when it comes to Marini Mast Attachments? They can vary from not connecting the right electrical cable, not being the right voltage, as I said, or just connecting one of the batteries instead of both of them. So if the Mast Attachment PLC gets the wrong power supply, it acts all crazy and confusing. And this is the confusing part for everyone, because sometimes, as I said, it does work, and it opens the valves completely, so the mast is somewhat operational, but then sometimes it acts all crazy. You can't execute any other functions. Because you see, with the Mast Attachments, a lot of the times we don't install, as is not our excavator. We just provide the instructions and hope that the excavator mechanics have done the right thing. Technically, any excavator can be used depending on the size of the Mast Attachment, as long as you satisfy the stability condition and the electrical and hydraulic requirements. Then all is good. So how do we determine the right size of the excavator? A simple way to figure out is the weight of the attachment to be 10 to 20% of the weight of the excavator. But the correct formula is you have to consider the lifting capacity of the excavator at its weakest point across the tracks at 90 degrees, basically. With the boom fully extended, 1.5 meters off the ground, if the lifting capacity there is more than the weight of the attachment, together with the tools and the bits, then the excavator most likely would be a good fit. Now, let's talk about the oil delivery and the pressure. And the thing with it is you can't check oil delivery only at a certain hydraulic pressure, because as the hydraulic pressure increases, obviously, the delivery will decrease. So in order to be 100% sure about the oil delivery, you have to check the oil flow in different ranges. 0 to 50, 60 to 100, all the way up to 250, depending on the excavator. But first thing first, when it comes to hydraulics and Mast Attachments, you have to make sure that the return line does not have a pressure more than 12 bar. A little bit of pressure is okay, but cannot be more than 10, 12 bar. There's so many things that need to be checked in order to ensure that you've got a fully performing unit. And we certainly learned a lot over the last 20 Mast Attachments that we sold, and some of them we installed. Basically, we don't include the installation, right? We leave that to the client. But one thing that we learned is it's better for us to include it and to get the client to deliver the excavator to our yard and install it rather than let them do it. Because then if something doesn't work, the excavator guys blame it on us, we blame it on them, and then the client is left in no man's land, basically. Now, in terms of the operation, this is another sticky point here, because of course, when we do the commissioning and the startup of every equipment we sell, the client expects us to drill. And in some cases, they don't have experience with drilling, but we don't have experience. We're not drillers either. At most, we're liver pullers, right? That's it. That's all we are. So if the client doesn't have experience and maybe overestimates what the mast can do or the equipment can do in general, that can create issues. So this is definitely something that we're trying to put together as well and to improve at. We're trying to have guys that help us and specialize in drilling. They're actually experienced drillers that come to show to the client how the mast operates. But in general, what we do during the setup and commissioning, we check the pressures, we make sure the electrical connection is right, we check the stability, and we check every single function, the control, and we show the client the buttons. We do a commissioning report, and that's pretty much it. We sign off for the warranty. But we had situations a few times when the client said, well, you need to show us how to drill, which of course is a learning curve there because we don't really account for that. But anyway, it's something that we'll definitely keep in mind. And then moreover, you see, with every single equipment that we sell, we include, let's say, the commissioning, the startup, the warranty, but we do not include the travel of our technicians to where the job is. Let's say, for example, you have a remote job in a regional area. The regional flights cost like, let's say, $1,000, $2,000 a flight, plus all the time to travel to the airport, the rental car. All this stuff cannot be included. We cannot possibly account for all this stuff because we have no idea where you're going to work. If we do, our margins would have to be like humongous, but we can't. We have to stay competitive. So we tell the clients, look, we include the commissioning to your yard or to our yard in a major city, one time, and that's it. We can't show the let's say your operator 5 times, do 5 visits. It's just not feasible. So that's always something that needs to be established with every single purchase before the client places the order. We have to make them aware, and we are making them aware most of the times. We give them in writing, hey, this is what's included, this is what's not included, for everybody to be on the same page. That's pretty much it for today, guys. This was a short episode. I just wanted to clarify a few points on the Marini Mast Attachments, what the requirements are, what's important to establish with this type of equipment, and why it can be a sticky point because there's multiple parties at work between the excavator supplier, the client, us, the drilling, let's say the dealer, and Marini as the supplier, the overseas manufacturer. So it's important that everybody is on the same page. That's why we wanted to do this episode. I hope it offers some clarity. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them. Send us a message. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, that like. It really helps us. It makes me feel like I'm doing something good here. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. We're going to be talking about types of CFA in the next episode. Until then, please stay safe, and please remember, if you're not earning, you're not earning. Hey, thank you again for watching this episode. I hope you found this interesting. Now, if you guys are someone that have an interesting topic to talk about, or an interesting application, or an interesting technology or piece of equipment, and you want to share with us here with the audience at TerraQuip Talk, please hit me up. I'll be more than happy to hear from you. I'm always open to hearing new ideas about technologies, about how we can make things safer, first of all, in our industry, more efficient, and just better overall. So if you have an idea, please hit me up. Send me a message. You know where to find us.